name's Sophie Foster, and welcome to Can We Talk About That, the podcast where we break down gender-based violence in our everyday lives right here in Oxford County. I sit down with a local expert every Wednesday, and we unpack a different topic or situation or context that happens in Oxford County and happens within gender-based violence. In each episode, we learn more information about what services are offered in Oxford County, or just learning more about the topic. What is consent? What is sexual violence? What is abuse? And just kind of to help us unpack what it looks like. So before we get into today's topic, again, of sexual violence, consent, trauma, abuse, all really difficult kind of conversations, we do just want you to know that if at any point you need to pause or maybe skip this episode or come back later when it's a little bit of a better day, please feel free to do that. We just want you to kind of take care of yourself as you listen. And if you do need help or support processing what we talk about, please feel free to call the DASO crisis line, Domestic Abuse Services Oxford. The crisis line toll-free number is 1-800-265-1938. It is open 24/7, it's free, and it's confidential. For today's episode, I'm back with Sarah Ferguson from Oxford Sexual Assault Services, OSAS, here in Oxford County. So Sarah is a registered psychotherapist, and she works with clients who are survivors of sexual violence.
Yes.
And for today's episode, we are taking it one step further from our last one we recorded. And this episode's called When It's Someone You Know, Sexual Abuse from Friends, Family, and People You Trusted. This one is a very hard topic.
It's a big topic, yes.
But I think that it's very relevant to a lot of people.
100%, yeah.
So, to get started, why is it so hard to see something maybe as abuse or violence when it's coming from a friend or family member?
Yeah, I think it kind of goes into the fact of, within larger societies, we get a lot of narratives about how friends and family should act, right? Oh, my mom, my dad, my uncle, my aunt, my friend would never hurt me. Those types of things. So I think it's challenging a lot of that, and then, kind of the confusion around all of that too. And I think a lot of the different types of abuse that happen within these closer relationships don't necessarily happen overnight, right? They're very slow. They're very hard to kind of see in the moment, which makes it then kind of the norm, right? Of like, oh, well, that's just how Uncle Phil or whoever it is acts, right? It becomes normalized. And I think we know too, as much as we think stranger danger when it comes to different types of violence, most children who experience sexual violence in childhood, it actually does happen from someone they know. But it's so secret, it's so quiet that we don't really recognize it. So I think that's what makes it so difficult to kind of see or understand what happens within these close relationships too.
And just process.
Yeah.
Can you maybe give some examples of what, and because you're with the sexual assault, I always say center, sexual assault services, I think in this context, we're talking about sexual violence.
Yes, but I think too, it can be so much more. Like there's different types of abuse within these relationships, right? There's like the physical violence, there's verbal abuse, right? Mental and emotional abuse, obviously like sexual assault or continued sexual violence, even things like coercion, control, isolation, like all of these things can be present in these abusive relationships, right? And I think it's, oftentimes when people think abusive relationships, physical violence or sexual violence, but it is a little bit more nuanced than that.
I think this topic's also getting more mainstream online too, and we're seeing lots of, words that maybe you don't know what it means. I feel like grooming is a big word that we're seeing.
Yes, I think that's kind of a buzzword as of late.
Yes. Can we maybe talk about grooming and like how do people get pulled into something harmful without realizing what's happening? You mentioned, it's slow. It's a slow process.
Yeah, for sure. And I think too, like if we think about it, grooming is kind of the lead up to that coercion and abuse and control, right? So it's kind of this period where the perpetrator is going to select their preferred target or person that they want to go after. And they're really nice, they're really kind, they're kind of persuasive and all of these things, right? It could look like flattery or giving gifts or doing all of these things and then eventually launching into a little bit more, right? So after this target is selected, kind of the flattery comes in, and then especially for kiddos or younger people, it then kind of goes into, planting the seed of distrust for other safe adults. It can then kind of launch into things like age-inappropriate conversation or exposing them to pornography, kind of really trying to normalize it. So the abuse can kind of flourish from there, so to speak. So like you said, it's a very slow process. People don't often know that they're being groomed until after the fact, right? Because again, we just think they're being kind. We just think they're being nice until we're out of it, and then we see the signs of it.
Yeah, it's really hard.
Yeah.
What do you think are some of the feelings that people feel when someone they loved, or maybe even just like a friend or an acquaintance that you know, crossed the line?
I think it's no right way to feel, right? I think everyone's going to feel their own emotions in a different way, but some of the kind of common ones would be things like anger, sadness, shame, or even guilt, right? Feeling like they did something wrong through this process. But I think probably the most common one or biggest one would be confusion, right? Around, well, this person said they loved me, but then they did this to me. So trying to hold space for that and tease that apart, I think probably those few emotions are the most common ones in that.
Well, and just to go kind of along with those feelings, it makes you think about why so many people stay quiet about abuse that they faced, or maybe sexual assault or violence from a friend or family member. And why would you say that it's a lot of those feelings? Why would you say people maybe hold it in?
I think there's quite a few things that can kind of go into folks staying quiet or, pushing this down. One, I know we talked about it in the earlier episode, right, of it not being safe to address those feelings. That could be a huge one. Or the narrative of, well, it wasn't bad enough, right? Well, they didn't hit me, so it couldn't have been that bad. Or, well, they didn't touch me. They just made me watch certain things. It's not that bad. Other things in there too, right? Like, I think perpetrators also kind of put narratives in there, especially if it's happening in childhood, right? If you tell someone, they won't believe you. If you tell mom or dad, it'll break the family apart. I'm doing this because you like it. All of those things, right? These thoughts get planted and then they become our beliefs. So I think it's a lot of different pieces in there, right? The thoughts, maybe the fear that they won't be believed. There's a lot of the narratives around, well, I don't want to get them in trouble, is a huge one in there as well, right? I think if we look at friendships, that's big, right? My friend did this, but I don't want them to get in trouble for it because I still care about them. Yeah,
that's really tricky. Well, and a lot of abuse comes from friends and family.
Yep.
That's the main, like you said, it's not really stranger danger. It's usually people you know. What would you say to someone who's maybe listening and thinking, I don't know if this counts?
I mean, I might be biased, but I think the first step is to kind of maybe make that call to OSAS, to even just have that conversation of, this happened, I don't know what it is, right? Because we do provide education around that, and maybe we can be that first place where they disclose this information or feel safe enough to share that with people and then kind of go from there.
Well, and thinking about, consent is really big right now, and some people, like a lot of us weren't given education on what consent was growing up. Most of us. And so I think as you kind of unpack that and realize maybe more of what consent is and a little bit more knowledge around that, realizing like, asking those questions of, does it count? I'm not sure, I said yes, but I changed my mind. And that's hard. That's really confusing. So maybe can you explain how OSAS supports people dealing with these kind of complicated situations with family members, or friends, let's say too. They don't want to make charges and they don't really want to tell everyone about it, but they need support.
Yeah, and I think too, it kind of goes back to the unique aspect of OSAS of like, we do have so many different types of support available, whether it's community support, right? Like, I need new housing because, I got kicked out of my house because my abusive partner is there, right? Or, for folks experiencing counseling, I think goes back to the idea of like, I'm never going to push you further than you want to go, right? I'm very much, you're in control, you have the power in these sessions, let's go where you want to go and give you the skills, right? Because at the end of the day, these survivors are experts in their own experience. They know more about themselves than I do. I'm just having that conversation and, perhaps providing them with some skills and support to manage these things for the first time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which even just getting a few skills to kind of deal with it. Maybe that negative self-talk.
Yeah.
Anything like that would be really helpful.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't have to be like, let's dive into all your trauma of your life, because a lot of folks think therapy is that, and it's not always that.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be that. And like you said, you're in the power seat. You get to decide where you go and how fast you go or how slow you go. Mm-hmm. No one's going to force you to do anything. We talk about consent. It's the same thing.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So maybe what are some things people get wrong about abuse in families or friendships too?
Yeah, I think like within families specifically, there's a lot of myths around like, oh, well, this only happens to poor, uneducated women or women who can't stand up for themselves. Or, oh, family violence only happens in certain cultures. Or, people lie about abuse. Children lie about abuse all the time. Or I think a huge one too is, oh, abuse doesn't happen in the LGBTQIA plus community. It's very heteronormative, which isn't true either. And I think to broaden that up within like abuse within friendships, it's, well, if they stayed, it wasn't that bad. Or, myths around it only happens to certain people, I think is a big one, or people ask for abuse, all of those things too, right? So, abuse isn't common when we know the numbers. It's actually quite common.
Mm-hmm. So let's hypothetically say that, we know that the numbers are really high. Let's say that someone in my life, a friend, a family member, has said, this kind of thing happened to them. Yeah. Maybe they were out at a party and a sexual assault happened, and then they tell me, let's say even like 2 years later, they tell me. How can I be helpful in that situation?
Yeah, I think first thing and probably the main thing is to listen without judgment, right? Just to kind of be that space for them to share what they're sharing with you. And I think then kind of, instead of launching into kind of that interrogation aspect, it's validating their experience, right? Naming the emotions that they might be feeling. A really helpful tip is to avoid the why questions and instead just validate, just sit with your friend. I think we kind of talked about too, right? Making sure that they're going at a pace where they feel safe, right? So not pushing for that information, not pushing them to disclose more than they're ready for. And I think too, right, it's maybe encouraging them to reach out for supports or medical attention if they need to, things like that. Encouraging them to look up some supports and maybe then reaching out to support yourself, right? Because we want to make sure that you're taking care of yourself to show up for this friend or family member in that moment. And then a really important thing too is keeping that disclosure confidential, right? It's not this hot piece of gossip you got at the mall that you're then going to go tell everyone you know. I think it's really important to be that safe, confidential place for those disclosures too.
Well, and I think even just thinking of our context in Oxford County,
small town life, right?
My saying is like, if I don't know you, I know someone who knows you.
Yeah.
So when something like this happens in our community, it can be really hard because maybe I tell my friend that something happened at a party and they also know the person who maybe, committed that violence against me. So then it gets really complicated. And that's why we need services like this to help kind of unpack and help learn. Like I said, many of us didn't learn about consent. We didn't learn about boundaries. We didn't learn about those things. So we all as a community kind of have to work together to make it better. And hold people accountable and grow and heal and all the things. It's very complicated. You got a big job ahead of you.
It's a big system at play. It's not just me. Luckily, Laura comes in a little bit too.
Well, that's good. Well, and Dasso and Ingamo. And that's the point of the podcast, is that it is this big puzzle and we all are trying to work together to kind of make our community safer and better and healthier, happier, all the things. So to wrap up our episode, if someone's listening and maybe realizing like, this sounds like my story. I didn't realize it was my story, but it is my story. What would you want them to know?
I think that they're not alone in their experience, right? To go back to how common it is, right? 1 in 3 women and girls, 1 in 9 boys and men, right? And I know experiencing abuse or trauma, right? We very much have the narrative of, well, no one understands. No one knows what I'm going through. And not that I'm claiming to be an expert or anything like that in their unique experience, but I think knowing that services are there, they're not alone in all of this, can be so huge. There are people out there that want to hear their story, and they're going to believe their story when they come forward, or if they choose to come forward. I think that would be the main thing.
Yeah, that would be huge. Well, thank you so much for coming on this episode. I think that this one is extremely relevant, and OSAS was the place to go for these questions. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Can We Talk About That? Please feel free to leave a comment or share your thoughts below. We would love to hear from you and hear maybe what other topics you'd like to know about or learn about, and just kind of what you're getting from these episodes. If anything in this conversation maybe brought something up for you that you need help processing or need advice on, please call the DASO Crisis Line, Domestic Abuse Services Oxford. The toll-free number for the crisis line is 1-800-265-1938. It's open 24/7, it's free, and it's confidential. We'll be back with more conversations that hopefully help us to unpack gender-based violence and what it looks like in Oxford County. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next episode.